Please welcome to the stage the founder of Black Hat, Jeff Moss.
Wow, this is it's a pretty good record for a day 2 keynote opening. Thanks everyone for getting up, coming and seeing us. This is our second and unfortunately last day of Black Hat Europe, 25th anniversary. I'm gonna keep saying that. Yes, woo! And it's making me a little nostalgic, kind of thinking about how far we've come in 25 years, what's changed and what hasn't. You know, when I was a young miscreant hacking things online, there really was nothing at risk. Like I'm sure at the time I thought I was kind of a badass, but really there wasn't anything at value. Like, how much harm could I have possibly done? I could have maybe stolen some free phone calls, but there was nothing online. There's no health records. It's not like today. Also in those early days, there really was no law against hacking. The prevalent law in America at the time was essentially look but don't touch, derived from some FCC rules. And even back then, piracy was legal. You could copy things as long as you didn't sell it for personal gain. So you could copy things, you could make backups, you could trade with your friends, but if you tried to sell it, that was the criminal act. How much that has changed. And so in those early days, you could explore the internet, or X25 or whatever, and you really, worst case scenario is toll charge fraud. Nowadays, the amount of minimum sentencing guidelines, you download a tool, you run it, you DDoS something, you could be facing years in jail for running a tool, right? And so kids now can absolutely destroy their whole future by running the wrong thing, associating with the wrong people, doing exploits online. And a lot of times judges don't have discretion. This is a totally different world than what I grew up in. And so our second day keynote speaker now, Joe Kiddie, he's going to talk about sort of the modern teenage hackers. And there's now money to be made. There's monetization. There's so many different pathways that were closed to us when I was younger, which I'm really glad now in hindsight. Who knows if I had been active back then. So what I want to talk about is just introducing you a bit to Joe, a reporter, a presenter, and author at the BBC. And while there have been reporters in the past that would touch on technology at the BBC, Joe is actually the first cyber correspondent and the foremost voice at the corporation on cybercrime and hacking. He's recently released a book, Control-Alt-Chaos, How Teenage Hackers Hijack the Internet. It's out now. He's going to be doing a book signing later on today, down in floor 0. So if you want to meet him, or maybe get a book signed if you like what he says, that's your opportunity. When he's out of books, he's out of books. His title is going to be From Script Kiddie to Cyber Kingpin, Preventing the Predictable Progression. And I just want to think about, as we build systems, as we raise our kids, it's really important because what I have noticed is that politicians and people in general, we fear what they don't understand. And when they fear something, they tend to overregulate it. And this is why we end up with laws where it's running a tool can get you in more trouble than driving drunk and killing someone with a car. Right? That seems disproportionate, but that's where we are. And so I'm hoping that over time we can rationalize this. And so I'm really looking forward to the insights Joe's gleaned from studying teenage hacking from the 2010s onward. And I'm really looking forward to his talk. So let's give a warm welcome to Joe. Thank you.
Morning. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having me, Black Hat. It's a real honor. So just check my clicker works. Yes, it does. Great. So I'll start with a question. Are there any Finnish people in here today? Any Finns? Oh, there are a couple. You'll know this then. This stat blew my mind. Apparently in Finland, it's estimated there are 3 million saunas. And it's only a country of 5.5 million. Quite impressive. In fact, some people think that it's the sauna culture in Finland that makes it one of the happiest nations on earth. It regularly comes up on these lists of, happy countries. People think that, maybe it's because they sweat their worries away in the saunas. And in Finland, traditionally, Saturday night is sauna night. This is where people come together, friends, family, alone at home, whatever, to have their weekly ritual sauna. And on Saturday, the 26th of October, during that ritual, many people's lives were effectively changed and ruined because they received an email, an extortion email. There's one lady I spoke to called Tiina Parikka, and she was having a Saturday night sauna with her husband. Bear in mind, of course, this is the pandemic, height of the pandemic, so she'd had a horrendous week. She was a head of a university, so she was really, the pressure was on to keep her staff and students safe from COVID. So there she was in the sauna, having a relax. She came out, she sat down, she had that lovely post-sauna glow that we all get, where you're sort of cooling down, she's sitting down. She checked her emails, and her blood ran cold. This is what she received. I'll just read the bits in yellow. Feel free to read it if you want to. Dear Mrs. Parikka, we have hacked into the medical records of Vastaamo. We regrettably have to ask you to pay to keep your personal data safe. Send bitcoins to our address. Then there's a 200 worth in 24 hours or 500 after that. If we do not receive our money even after this period, your details we've made available for all to see, including, and this is the bit, transcripts of your conversations with your therapist or psychiatrist. We talk about data breaches all the time. I report on them all the time. And it's quite often hard to kind of know what to make of these breaches, how much damage can be done if someone has my name, address, email address, phone number, social security number. But when it comes to data like this, your deepest, darkest secrets, the thing you tell your therapist, I can't think of a worse data set to be in the hands of a criminal. And for Tiina, it was an utterly traumatic moment. She did a sort of mental audit of all the things she'd been telling her therapist for the last 2 years. She'd been going every week. Marriage problems, issues at work. The thing that really upset her the most, though, was when she talked completely openly, as you do to your therapist, about the pressure and the heartbreak of raising 2 disabled children. And she said the feeling that this someone somewhere had all that information about her, she described it as like a psychological rape, and she had a panic attack. But she wasn't the only one to receive that email. There are about 27,000 people in Finland that received that same email in their own name with a threat, I'm going to publish your details. This became global news, as you can imagine, the Vastaamo data breach. I still maintain it's the cruelest cyber attack ever. I can't think of a more nasty, evil act in cyber than this one. You've got to put yourself in the position of people like Tiina and others. They're vulnerable people already. Some of them were going to their therapist talking about depression, extramarital affairs, dark fantasies. Some of them were in witness protection. And now, because of the sanctity of the privacy of a therapy room was exploded by this hacker, they were all in, absolute, some people have got PTSD and they're still recovering from it. And one of the lawyers who represents thousands of those victims, she has said, and I'm not sure of the evidence here, I've never been fully satisfied with the evidence, but she said, and it was said in open court, that at least 2 people killed themselves after receiving that email. So I think it's hard to beat in terms of a cruel cyber attack. But this, of course, was the final stage in a cyber attack. that started off in 2018 when a hacker broke into the servers of Vastaamo. It wasn't hard. They had no password. It was root. He got in straight away. Took a couple of minutes. Downloaded all the patient notes and all the names, addresses, phone numbers, social security numbers of all those people. About 33,000 people in total were affected by this. Then the hacker, calling himself Ransom Man, went to the CEO of Vastaamo and said, pay me 400,000 euros in Bitcoin, or I will publish all this data, all your patients' deepest, darkest secrets online. The CEO didn't pay, so then he went to step 2 and released, day after day, 100 records of these people, these poor people. He searched for the most salacious information he could find to try and cause as much chaos as he could, try and put pressure on the company into paying. Then he made an absolutely horrendous error, a giant blunder that I won't go into, but that's what led him to carry out the sort of Hail Mary nuclear option of going directly to the patients. We just don't see that very often. We don't see that in cyber, where individual data breach subjects are contacted directly by the hackers. Unfortunately, it is something that's growing, and there's been a case which I'll come to this year, for example, but especially back then, very, very rare, and extra nasty. But that mistake he made actually led the police eventually into finding him. Here he is. Julius Kivimaki. I reckon that he's the most hated hacker in history. Not just because of Vastaamo, but other things as well. But there's people in this room that have been in cyber a lot longer than I have. So if there's anyone else who you think should get that ignoble title, please come and talk to me afterwards. I won't be mad. We can change it in the reprint of the paperback. It'll be fine. Genuinely interested in case I've missed someone. So this was the Europol most wanted poster for him. They put out a red notice because they didn't know where he was. He'd disappeared. He's Finnish, but they couldn't find him. And they unmasked him, and they had to start a manhunt. They eventually found him sort of by mistake in Paris. He was living under false identities, brought him back to Finland, and he was convicted for the Vastaamo data breach and extortion. He was released, actually, a couple of months ago. So we hope this is the end of his cybercrime career. But it was a long career, and it started, of course, when he was a teenager. Here he is, 17 years old at this stage, calling himself Ryan. This is my interview I did with him on Sky News. And really, that interview with him is the reason I'm here today. I came into the newsroom. I was working for Sky News at the time, and it's Christmas 2014. And I hadn't done any cyber stories. I had no idea what this cyber security nonsense was. I'd covered a bit of tech, but I was a general correspondent, so it was all new to me. And it was in the betwixtmas between Christmas and New Year. And I remember I came in and I was sort of a bit hungover, a bit tired. I didn't want to have a tough story that day. I wanted an easy story. When you're a correspondent, what you pray for when you're feeling lazy is a day when you get to just talk about a story at the nice warm desk in the studio. Wasn't to be. My friend came over, news editor Paul Harrison, and he said, "Have you heard about this Lizard Squad attack?" I said, "No, what are you talking about?" And he said, "It's everywhere, it's massive. Over Christmas time, these kids managed to bring down Xbox Live and PlayStation 1. Nope, got it wrong. PlayStation, no, that was right. The two biggest gaming platforms in the world. And he said, it's enormous, it's a global story, it's affecting about 150 million people. They can't connect to the servers, which means they can't play games with their mates online, they can't download new games, they can't register the new consoles, spend their vouchers, enormous impact on a huge number of people, and these kids are bragging about it online. They call them themselves Lizard Squad. So he said, you need to get on this story now. We need to beat the competition. We need to get some of these experts in, talk about why. And he said the chilling words, Riley's called. So if you're a Sky News reporter and you hear the words, Riley's called, that's terrifying. John Riley is the head of Sky News. And he said, Riley's called. He wants a lizard on air tonight. So I was like, well, how on earth am I going to get one of these kids who are tweeting anonymously from the Lizard Squad Twitter account to come on and do an interview on Sky News? It led me down a ridiculous wild goose chase, but I've actually managed to get Julius Kivimaki, calling himself Ryan at the time, also known as Zekil, because that's the first lesson of these teenage hacking gangs. They love the attention. So actually, it was easier than you think. Once I actually found him, it took me a long time to find him, he was like, yeah, sure. So we did this interview, and it was like a red rag to a bull to the cyber world. This kid had no remorse. He was loving the attention. He talked about, we did it to expose the security, blah, blah, blah. But everyone knew they did it for a laugh, and they did it just because they could. But I didn't realize at the time that Kivimaki was already infamous in the cybercrime world. He'd had years of being in various gangs, causing problems, hacking individuals, hacking companies. He was already on double bail at this point when he came on Sky News. I spoke to the police officer who arrested him the first incident, and he just head in hands when he saw Kivimaki pop up on Sky News. So who do you do it with? These guys. Lizard Squad. Anyone recognize this? If you're in security, sort of 2014, 2015, you probably recognize these guys. Might make you feel a bit hairs on your back of your neck, stand up. They were pretty prolific. They went after lots of different companies, mainly sort of blunt DDoS attacks against gaming companies, which is weird because they're gamers themselves. But that's what they did. They wanted to become famous on Twitter, and they wanted to cause as much damage and chaos as they could and get newspaper headlines. So they made their little logo, and they started hacking things. And there's one hack that always sticks in my mind as it tells you the type of people that we're talking about here. They hacked and defaced the website of Malaysia Airlines, and instead of 404 page not found, they wrote 404 plane not found, which is obviously a sick joke about the missing MH370 airline, which was around the same time. They're the kind of kids we're talking about here. They also did some more high-level stuff. They planted fake stories on news websites by hacking the news websites. For example, they did one that was quite funny. They hacked a website and said that Tupac was alive and well and living on an island in New Zealand. But they did another one which wasn't funny, about Rupert Murdoch being dead, and that was posted to the Sun's own website. That's the kind of kids they are. So Lizard Squad, they came around, and if you look up, infamous gangs, famous hacking groups, they'll be on most lists because of the Christmas Day, the Christmas time hacks. But of course, they weren't created in a vacuum. They were part of this massive conveyor belt of gangs in the 2010s that there was this upswell of teenage hacking culture that gave birth to these groups, and there were loads of them. It was the most active period of time, I think, for teenage hacking that we'd had ever seen, and arguably we're sort of in the middle of one right now. There is no doubt an upswell, which I'll come to. But there were some of the groups, for example, you had HTP, Hack the Planet. Everyone knows Hack the Planet from the film Hackers. At the very end, when he gets arrested, and he hangs his head out the window and he screams, "Hack the planet!" Everyone knows that. It's like a meme, So these kids, one of the gangs, they called themselves HTP. And that was Kivimaki's, I think, first or second gang, around, I think it was 2012. Then there was ISIS gang, named deliberately to bring fear into people. This is a time when ISIS was on the march through Syria, in Iraq. There were fears of some sort of, cyber caliphate or something. So these kids knew what they were doing when they called themselves ISIS gang. Team Crucifix or Die. I don't know where that came from. So immature kids trying to be scary, satanic or something. Then there's UG Nazi. Absolutely fascinating gang. Some of the social engineering that those kids did was absolutely incredible. Won't go into it now, but you almost have to take your top hat off to them for some of the stuff those kids did. They had a logo. They had a picture of Hitler with baby eyes. That was their logo. So around this time, 2010s, most security people were just kind of ignoring these kids' gangs because they were like, they're just script kiddies. We can ignore them. They're not doing anything. And also, no one wants to talk about being hacked by a lizard in a top hat. They want to talk about being hacked by sophisticated nation-state actors. Russia, China, North Korea. No one wants to admit little Johnny upstairs has popped their corporation. But there was one researcher called Alison Nixon, who many of you are probably familiar with. She's a US researcher, and she's still like the foremost voice on teenage hacking culture. And she and her colleague at the time said, no, there's something here. There's something happening with these kids. We need to start researching them, and we need to understand them so that we can defend against them. And she came up with a term which has caught on, which is, they're called NPTs. So these kids are NPTs. They're not APTs, everyone in here I'm sure knows, advanced persistent threats. They are the creme de la creme of hacking groups. They are the most well-funded, expert, patient groups out there. The Fancy Bears of Russia, Lazarus groups of North Korea, Volt Typhoon, Salt Typhoon, whatever of China, the Eagle, Longhorn, or whatever the American one is, and then, of course, UK's got APTs as well. So Alison said, these are NPTs because they're noob persistent threats. They're newbies. They're learning on the job. They're not skilled. But she argued back then, and she still argues today, and now I'm banging the drum, that they are persistent and they are a threat, and that we need to take them seriously. And don't we know that this year? And even back then, she was right. So NPTs. There's other ones as well that have come out the last couple of years. There's NPTeens. And then my favorite one I heard a few weeks ago, apparently it comes from the one of the heads at the National Cybersecurity Center. He said they're adequate, pernicious toe rags, which is great, because it does exactly tell you what these kids are like. You don't have to be brilliant. You just have to be adequate to get in and to cause chaos. So you might be thinking, where did this come from? Where did this NPT 2010's upswell start? And I would argue it started with lulzsec. Anyone remember lulzsec? Laugh out, you know it all. Laugh out loud security. That's what lulzsec. And they were from Anonymous. They were a group that sort of were a splinter off Anonymous. Everyone knows Anonymous. Very serious, very earnest cybercrime collective. There's no leader or anything. They just kind of rally around certain causes. So, for example, they'll be about exposing corruption or embarrassing Scientologists or whatever. They've got this logo. We all know this. Oh, they wear the Guy Fawkes mask as well. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us. Knowledge is free. I didn't know that bit. That's a new bit. Knowledge is free. And that's, thousands and thousands of hackers in 2009, 2010 coming together around certain causes, causing a huge amount of fuss and headlines and attention and doing, moralistic type hacks. So there was a splinter of Anonymous, and they thought, that looks fun. Let's have a bit of that. But I don't want to do serious stuff with morals. I want to have fun with it. So lulzsec was born. It's a small group of mostly teenagers in the US, UK, and Ireland. And actually, there's still one kid that's now a man that's out there at large. I don't know where he's from, but he messaged me the other day. I'm still trying to work out if he actually is who he says he is. But anyway, small group, so very different from Anonymous in terms of not going for a giant collective. We're going for a small, close-knit group of kids. And they said, we're going to do it differently. We're going to have a silly logo, and we're going to have this as our motto. This is the internet, where we screw each other over for a jolt of satisfaction. So those guys were pretty active for about a month in, I think it was summertime 2011. And they were prolific. They were all over social networks. They were all over Twitter. And they became what they wanted to become, infamous and feared. And if you were a security professional, you would know about lulzsec during this period of time. They hacked, for example, they hacked Fox. Again, this is another give you another idea of the kind of motives behind their hacks. Not moralistic at all. They went after the the network Fox, and they stole the private details of 70,000 X Factor contestants, and they leaked them online because apparently someone on Fox said something they didn't like about one of their favorite rappers. And that's how these things work with these gangs. They get together, they're just chatting in these channels, and then someone will say something that sparks an idea to go off on an attack. And that's the kind of guys that LulzSec were. They were rounded up in the end. There was, I think he was mid-20s, a guy from New York. And then he helped the police get all the other kids around the world. And what's fascinating about LulzSec is that if you see interviews with them, even sort of a few years afterwards, there is a glint in their eye of, they enjoyed what they did. But there's also remorse and regret as they've grown up and they've realized what they did actually did harm people. And there's one of the kids called Jake Davies. He's known as Topiary online. His job in the gang was mostly to be the mouthpiece for the gang and to get attention online. He was very good at it. He helped LulzSec gain, I think it's like 300,000 followers on Twitter. That's a pretty decent level of fame in just a few weeks because they realized that hacking and then talking about it online, that was interesting. And they arrested Jake Davies, and although he was really sarcastic and funny on Twitter, he was quite a shy boy when they found him living in the Shetland Islands. And he did this interview when he got out of prison. He didn't spend long in prison, but he went to Feltham Young Offenders Prison, which is horrendous. My mum used to work there, and some of the stories she talks about, nasty, nasty, nasty place. And he did this interview, and he said he was sort of imploring kids, please, don't go down the cynical route of cybercrime. It'll ruin your lives. Very powerful stuff to hear that from someone who's been there, done it, seen it, arrested, released. But the problem is, the wheels of justice, particularly in cyber, turn so slowly. That interview wasn't done until, I think it was mid-2013, years after the event. And the other problem is, how many kids are watching Newsnight? None. Especially not kids abroad. So you get these sort of really important voices speaking up about these things, but they have no impact because, of course, it just takes too long and it's the wrong platform speaking to the wrong people. So that was Jake Davies. I would argue that LulzSec are the ones that really nudged teenage hacking culture in a direction which we haven't come back from. Every gang that's been going since is nothing like the ones previously. And you might be thinking, well, hang on a minute, there's always, like Jeff said earlier, teenagers have always been hackers, and hackers have always been teenagers. It's just, something that kids do. I would say yes. But if you look at the gangs of the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, it was different. Think about Legion of Doom, Cult of the Dead Cow, Chaos Computer Club, Loft. There were bad apples, of course. Of course there were bad apples. But there was a different ethos. There was a do no harm ethos. There was the Hacker Manifesto. Everyone know this? This is a brilliant poem written by Lloyd Blankenship, known as the Mentor, 1986. Another one got caught today. It's all over the papers. Teenager arrested in computer crimes scandal. Hacker arrested after bank tampering. Damn kids, they're all alike. It goes on like that. It's excellent. And he and his mates had just been arrested, getting in trouble with the police, and he was saying, no, leave us alone. Hackers are just misunderstood. We're here to make the internet better. We're here to protect privacy. We're here to make the internet safer. And we're misunderstood. And that was the ethos in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. But things have changed so dramatically now. I don't think any of these feelings of moral duty have survived. And when I was writing the book, there was a friend of mine who's also an author. He gave me some advice. He said, Joe, you need to be careful when you're writing the book that you have a specific period of time where you gather for the book and a specific period of time where you actually write. Because otherwise, people in the room know, writing is tough. The most fun bit about writing is not writing. It's the reading and the research and the kind of possibilities are endless. And putting pen to paper is really difficult. So that was the advice I got. He said, you need to have these silos. Failed every night. Couldn't do it. found myself falling down rabbit hole after rabbit hole. But I'm so glad I did one night, because I found an interview between Kivimaki, Ezekiel, Ryan, whatever you want to call him, and the internet personality, controversial guy, Kim.com. And it was around the Lizard Squad stuff. And Kim.com was saying to Kivimaki and the Lizard Squad kids, you guys are ruining hacking. You're giving it a bad reputation. Hacking used to be good. They used to do things for everyone and help people. And you've given us a bad name now. And Kivimaki just laughs. And he says, you can't compare us to the old cats. Hacking has a completely different meaning now. And I just thought, wow, there you go. In one sentence. There it is. Straight in the book. Happy days. So I've told you when this shift happened. I've told you how the shift happened. But why? And this is something my publisher challenged me on, because I handed in the first draft, and they were like, yeah, it's great, yeah, you've done the story nicely, whatever. Can you take your boring, objective BBC hat off, Sky News hat off, and put your neck on the line a little bit and try and give your opinion about why you think this shift happened? And I was like, oof, don't know about that. Opinions. Anyway, I'm glad they challenged me, because I came up with 3, I think, pretty good reasons. Number 1, Twitter. Before Twitter, social networks were about being social with your network. But then Twitter came along, sort of 2009, 10, 11, started becoming really popular. And Twitter showed you don't need friends, you need followers. And you don't need to be popular or famous, you just need to be infamous. And you can be edgy. And you can make your name that way. And of course, the likes and the retweets. I mean, if you talk to some of these back then kids, now men, they loved it. They loved getting the followers, getting the likes and retweets, the endorphins, you know. They are kids. And even, you know, people, we like the likes, don't we, as well? It's a, billion-dollar industry for a reason. So that's the first one, Twitter. Second one, I think, is the rise of live text, and then voice, and then video chat. So before this, if you were a hacker, like Jeff was saying, you might breach a company or whatever, carry out something sort of attack, post it to a bulletin board or an early forum, wait hours for a reply, maybe days. Sometimes you'd meet up in person in pubs like the guys from Loft used to do. They used to actually physically be together, carrying out white hat and grey hat attacks. And then along comes IRC chat, and then Skype, and now, of course, Discord and Telegram. And suddenly you've got this ability to build really quite close and important relationships. Because, of course, as everyone knows, cybercrime is a team sport. Everyone needs to come together and bring different things to the table. And I think the rise of these technologies really did help to bring about this shift in the gangs. And the third one, Bitcoin. Obvious. How do you make money before Bitcoin out of data breaches? Very, very difficult. You could do some early carding, but Bitcoin proved you can make money from breaches. And I think because of those reasons, that's what propelled LulzSec and all those 2010s gangs to a completely different period, a different ethos than we've seen in previous periods. Every gang since then has been less interested in making the internet a safer place and more interested in seeing their Bitcoin wallet grow, becoming infamous, becoming feared, and causing chaos. Which brings us to the current crop, the COM. The COM is they do actually call themselves the COM, but they call themselves the community. And it's thousands of kids on Discord and Telegram and forums who are carrying out all manner of cyber delinquency activities, some of it really quite nasty, like sextortion, that kind of thing. But every now and then, out of that larger collective, in a similar way to the Anonymous and the LulzSec thing, you get a little breakaway of more dedicated and skilled hackers who want to just carry out cybercrime. So you had what we've got now, Scattered Spider. There is still going, Shiny Hunters, and then Lapsus. This is Aryan Kurtaj. He was the leader, or one of the leaders of Lapsus. 2022, they were causing all manner of hell for companies around the world, using social engineering techniques and MFA bombs to break into all sorts of companies. They hacked everyone. They were the big bad of cyber for a couple of years. NVIDIA, BT, Okta, Uber, Revolut, and most famously, Rockstar Games, the maker of GTA 6, this enormous forthcoming game, which they keep pushing back, which is very annoying. We think it's going to be next year. But he managed to break into the servers of Rockstar Games and steal 90 clips that were of development of the game and posted them online. He broke into the Slack channel of the company and started, using that to try and extort the company. I think he stole the source code as well. Cost about $5 million of damage, according to Rockstar Games, plus the loss, they call it like the loss of advertising opportunity or something. So, for example, his leaks proved and showed that for the first time there was going to be a female protagonist of the GTA series. That was, in the gaming world, that's quite a big deal. That's quite a big news story. And they didn't get to tell the public in the way they wanted. That kind of thing is what Rockstar talks about in the kind of like, what's it called, a victim impact statement thing, because I was in court for this, for the BBC, for this case. But the fascinating thing about the Rockstar Games hack is how he did it. So, and this is another lesson in the NPTs, is for a lot of these kids, hacking is just so addictive. They cannot stop. So Kurtage was hacking with another kid. He was in Oxford, the kid was in London, and they got arrested, and they had all their devices taken off them and put on bail. They carried on, somehow got new devices. Police went back, raided the house, confiscated all those devices, put them back on bail, and thought, right, that'll be it now, surely. But then there was a rumor that started going around the comm that Kurtage, who was called White or Breachbase, he was sitting on an absolute fortune of about $30 million worth of Bitcoin that he'd stolen over the years. So the police started fearing for his safety. So they thought, well, we can't take him into custody because he's a juvenile, and we're still trying to investigate his crimes. What are we going to do? So, unfortunately for Kurtage, they put him in a travel lodge in Bicester. Poor kid. And they thought, right, he's there now, no devices, we can't monitor him, but we're just going to have to hope he stops. He didn't stop. He carried on. And that's where he did the Rockstar Games. And the police were in a really difficult position because they had to find a reason to take him into custody. They had to get this kid off the streets because he was just harming so many companies and causing so much damage. But they had to catch him in the act. So what they did was they got the Telegram group of Lapsus up, which I was on, as were thousands of other people, and they waited for the username of Breachbase or White to pop up. I think it was actually Lily White from memory, like it was the username. They changed their usernames all the time, but I think it was Lily White. So they waited, and as soon as they saw it pop up, they got the key card, they did the hotel door, burst in, and there he is, on his bed, with a phone. Bingo, we got him. Breach of bail conditions, we can take him in custody, phew. But then they thought, hang on, how's he actually carried out these hacks? Can't even on a phone. So they searched the room. They found a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse, and they looked behind the hotel room TV, and there was an Amazon Fire Stick. And that's how he did it. They still don't know how he got hold of that equipment. They have no idea. There was an Argos nearby, but the security cameras didn't show him go. No one knows. But he just couldn't stop. And I was in court for that one, and tragically, because of his severe autism, the criminal psychologist said that he has no prospect of rehabilitation. So he has been given an indefinite hospital order. He won't be out. But after Kurtage and the other kid, and another kid in Brazil or Portugal was also arrested, Lapsus largely kind of dissolved. We never really heard from them again. But then, of course, that doesn't mean the kids that weren't arrested stop. They just move on to the next thing. And that's where we see the rise of Scattered Spider. And Scattered Spider is not like the other gangs where they give themselves a name and a logo. This is the name that we, the cybersecurity industry, I say we as if I'm cybersecurity industry, I don't know anything, I just watch and report. They have given Scattered Spider. So CrowdStrike, they're the ones that said, this cluster of activity over here on the internet with these TTPs all resemble the Lapsus style, and they're doing and acting in the way of NPTs. Let's call them scattered spider, because they're sort of scattered and they come together, and spider because they're criminals. That's the kind of the way that CrowdStrike does its naming. But there are other ones as well. My favorite is Muddled Libra. I have no idea where that came from. I can't remember who came up with that one, but that's my best one. Oh, and there's Octo Tempest, which I think is the Microsoft one. So that's the industry term for them. But the thing we've seen since Lapsus, which is really troubling, is that these NPTs have been joining up with ransomware gangs like Dragon Force. We saw it with some of the scatter spider hacks in 2023, 2024, which they famously completely screwed MGM Grand and Caesar's Palace. And it's reported that Caesar's Palace paid about 30 million, I think it was, to them. So then they kind of have a little period of quiet, don't know what they're doing. And then we saw this resurgence this year with a wave of attacks on retailers in the UK, Co-op, M&S, Harrods. And I find this absolutely fascinating. So the picture on the left, that is a picture that the hackers themselves sent to me. They contacted me through Telegram one afternoon when I was covering the retail hacks for the BBC, because they were angry, firstly, that they weren't getting paid, but also they were angry that Co-op was downplaying the breach, the hack. At the time, Co-op was saying, preventative measures were taken, precautions, everything's fine, no evidence that data's been stolen. And these kids got in touch with me and said, they're lying. We took millions of people's data. And I went to Co-op. Co-op admitted it, and then went public with the true extent of the attack, which was a breach, data theft, and then just before they started putting in the ransomware, Co-op managed to kick them out. But this picture really, I just think it's so fascinating, because you don't get that in normal cybercrime. I speak to a lot of cyber criminals, and it's very clinical, and I don't want to use the word professional, but it is. Whereas these kids are enjoying themselves. They've loaded up a Gen AI tool. They've made that picture to feel strong, feel powerful, and to cause, fear. And then, weeks later, I see the one on the right. This is on the Dragon Force website. So normally you go on these ransomware as a service websites that anyone can join. You guys can, if you want to become affiliates, you just, you give them 30% of the ransoms, they take 70. You can use their leak site to increase the pressure on victims. You can use their extortion portal, all that kind of stuff. Normally, it's very boring. You just have the logos of the companies that have been hit, like a kind of graveyard, with a countdown timer of when they're going to release the data or sell it or whatever. But the one on the right popped up, and I just thought, that's quite similar, isn't it? And it just made me think of the film Home Alone. The wet bandits? They can't help themselves. They leave a calling card. So the wet bandits are a couple of hapless burglars in Home Alone. And whenever they burgle a house, they plug the sinks and then turn all the taps to show they've been there. And these kids, they obviously love it, and they want to make everyone know it was them. They're not just normal affiliates. Oh, no. They're a gang, and they're there to be feared and to be respected. So if I was a detective and I had the people in custody, which we think they possibly have got the right people in custody for the Co-op, I'd be like, can you tell me about this one over here as well, please? I've blanked out the name of it. I can't remember the name of the company anyway. So that's the kind of another lesson we see with these NPTs. They don't operate in the same way that normal cybercrime does. And of course, I'm talking about, when I say normal cybercrime, I mean the Russian-speaking element of cybercriminality. That is where vast majority of attacks are coming from, of course. But these guys are different, and they differentiate themselves deliberately. And sometimes, because of that, you get these very, very strange scenarios, like, yes, I forgot about this bit. This is where we go from the scattered spider to where we are now. So after scattered spider, not that there is an after, because they just seem to keep coming, these guys are, it changes every day, to be honest, but they're calling themselves scattered, shiny, spider, Lapsus hunters. So these are the same kids, the same group that have done Co-op, M&S, and maybe even Jaguar Land Rover as well. And they've started a Telegram group in the last couple of months, and this is a couple of screenshots I took from that group. Me, like a lot of other journalists, are trying to keep up with all the nonsense and they keep getting their Telegram groups banned, and then they have to restart new ones. And I just wanted to show you these couple of bits. So the one on the left I think is interesting because what they're saying is, we're a super hacking group. We're no longer just Scattered Spider or Lapsus. We are all of it. We're an amalgamation. And actually, some journalists have called them a super group, which I hate because I think it gives them too much power. They'll love that. They'll love being called a super group. But there they are. They're saying, hey, can someone change that FBI wanted poster to have our new name? Because they want the recognition. And on the one on the right, nobody has created a channel, and within 24 hours, they hacked 10 new corporations and governments, including agencies. Long live Lapsus, Scattered, Spider, Shiny Hunters. I told you, changes every time. I don't know what they call themselves. But this is a really important thing, and another lesson here is that they know what they're doing. They are trolling us. They read all of your threat reports. And they know that we are trying to keep up with them and trying to understand them, and they're deliberately throwing us off the scent and lying all the time. The JLR hack, for example, they told me and sent me some evidence that it was them, but I'm not sure because they lie. And they're very, very unprofessional, unpredictable, and chaotic. For example, this one here. This was a story, bizarre, crazy, calamity of a cyber attack that was a few months ago. The strange thing about this for me is I've covered cybercrime now for more than 10 years, and this was quite small, really. Only about 8,000 kids were in this data set, but there was something about it that really upset the public, and it was probably the most read and most followed cyber attack I've ever covered. So you can see it going down there. The entire cybercrime enterprise in 4 screenshots. These guys hacked into Kiddie Nursery chain, and they messaged me on Signal about 4 days or something before they actually went public with it, saying, hey, we've hacked Kiddie, we're going to release all the pictures of the kids and all the profiles of the kids unless we get paid. Do you want to write a story? And I didn't, because the difficulty is, as a journalist, I know why they've come to me. They're using me as leverage. And I've got to be so careful I don't actually do their job for them and put pressure on the company to pay. So I didn't do anything on it. I sat there and I sort of read the messages and politely kept them talking, but with no interest in actually publishing the story. But then they went through with it. And they posted on their darknet leak site. They were calling themselves Radiant, and it was quite a new group. They posted these pictures of these poor kids, 10 little kids, with the profiles of everything about them and their families on their .NET Leak site. And we published a story, and then they doubled down and said we're going to do more, and then they did more, and it went absolutely bananas, and people were saying it's a new low in cyber, and the kind of heat on the group was such that they started backtracking. And they messaged me saying, okay, we're going to blur the pictures, and we're never going to hack nurseries again. It was a bad call. And then they did a complete U-turn, deleted all the pictures and data, and they went right up to the line of saying sorry, but didn't actually cross the line. And I think the interesting thing here is, I was in one of these geeky lunches I sometimes have with cyber people, and it wasn't me, to my shame, but someone at the table said, and it was around the kind of second story time, they said, who are these Radiant guys? What are they doing? It's so weird. Like, normal ransomware crews wouldn't firstly go after a small nursery chain, and they wouldn't post pictures of kids online because everyone in the cybercrime world is terrified of being called a pedo. It's like one of their big fears. And then they wouldn't, why would they do this? And this guy around the table said, I reckon they're kids, Because if you're a kid and if you're not a parent, and if you're not old enough to be a parent, you wouldn't necessarily know why it feels so wrong. And he was right. There we go. 2 teenagers arrested over cyber attack on nursery chain. So you get these kind of strange cyber attacks with NPTs that you just wouldn't get in other areas of cybercrime. So it's been a busy period. There's Kiddie, bottom right. That's the nursery chain. Those top three pretty much confirmed scattered spider, because they told me so, and there's been lots of arrests. And then the other ones as well, pretty guaranteed to be scattered spider or, kids adjacent to that. That's just the last 18 months of NPT attacks. And people keep saying to me, what is going on? What is happening? Who's to blame? Is it the kids? Is it the justice system? Is it the sentencing? Is it the fact that we don't punish juveniles enough for cyber attacks? And one thing that I keep getting is, surely it's the parents' fault. What are the parents doing while little Johnny's upstairs causing havoc on his laptop? And I used to think that. I'm a parent myself, but I used to think, yeah, they've got to answer for these parents. But then I went to a court case recently, and it changed my view. I was in court, and there were these two kids, very young adults, in the dock. And I knew one of the kids because he was in court 2 years before. And I thought, oh, he's back again. And I looked behind us, sort of press gallery here. We're all there, scribbling away. They're in the dock over there. And behind us, behind the glass, there's this woman on her own, and she looks absolutely devastated. And I remembered her. Oh, she's the mum of that kid over there. Poor woman, being dragged back into court by her horrible, horrible son. He was remanded in custody. And I remember thinking, and I remembered her in the court case 2 years ago, she cried tears of joy because he'd been given a suspended sentence. He was allowed to walk free. But here he was getting charged and remanded in custody. And we all went out to the area where you kind of sit outside the courtrooms, tip-tapping away on our laptops, filing our copy and stuff like that. And she comes out, and she is absolutely inconsolable. She's wailing, she's crying, she's lying on the floor, and the other lawyers are sort of stroking her hair and trying to calm her down. She cannot believe that she's back there. And I just thought to myself, that poor woman, like she has tried her best, no doubt, to try and keep on top of what her son is doing. But technology is generational. We will always get left behind. And because of that, I have a huge amount of pity for the parents whose kids drag them through these court cases. It's no longer a niche issue. So that's the last 18 months. But the other day, I wondered to myself, how many companies how many cyber attacks have I covered in my book over the last kind of 10 years of NPT activity? It's quite a few more. There we are. And that's only the ones that I've written about. That's only the ones I've looked into. That's only the ones we know and can confirm our kids. And behind every logo, there's a security team on their knees, having the worst months of their life. Families impacted by what it costs, the human cost of cyber attacks, to get back on their feet. There is, behind every logo, thousands, sometimes millions of individual customers who use these services who have had their data stolen and are now at the mercy of secondary attacks from scammers and other hackers. And behind every logo is a family going through hell and a kid that's just fallen down the wrong path. And we as a society have time and time and time again, first of all, underestimated these teenage hacking gangs, but also failed to stop this cycle. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I just have some housekeeping notes. If you wanted to talk with Joe, he's doing his book signing in the business hall 12:50 to 1:30 today. The next session starts here at 10:20. At 12:15 in this room is the main stage talk by Tom Gallagher. And then after him will be our afternoon keynote. Louise Marie Hurl will be in the room 1:30. And finally, we're doing something new this evening. Instead of a lock note ending session of Black Hat, we're trying a new startup spotlight competition, which will also happen here. And it's attempts to pitch contest where you're showcasing emerging cybersecurity startups, and the competition again, is here. So I'll be here, be checking out the new contest, see how it goes, wishing everybody best of luck. Finally, thanks everyone for getting up, getting out. Don't forget to take advantage of talking to the people around you. It's social, not just technical here. Thank you very much. I'll see you around.